Hello, my name is Arthur. In the last video, we finished up making walk and jump animations in Blender, and it's high time that I made some folders. So we'll create a folder. Let's call it Platformer Demo. We'll create a folder in there for animations. We'll create a folder in there for player. We'll come back, and actually we don't need to do anything more there. So we can select our output folder on the desktop, Platformer Demo, Animations, Player, Accept. And then, since I've talked about crashing, it's probably high time that I save this file in case I was to crash. That's one of my bad habits, is I don't really save my files enough. So we're just going to call this one player. There'll be a few blends by the time we're done. So we'll call that player blend. And we'll get to the camera and light. So for the camera and light, we're going to need to be in object mode. Let's select the camera, look through the camera. This is where we're at. We can pull down the animation bar so we have more to look at. So we're going to want the rotation on X to be 90, on Z to be 0. We'll put the camera on to X0. And Y0. That'll get us close. We'll come out. And at this point we can ignore. We're going to come into the camera settings, viewport display. Let's get composition guides, center. That way we can center our camera. And we're actually in the wrong place here. So let's see. Z90 is probably right. Y0. And then X, we'll come back on that. It's not going to matter. In order to render so that both of the players hit the ground, we should change from perspective to orthographic. And then control the size of the player in the frame with orthographic scale. Center them in the frame with Z. We'll get his foot near to the ground, because that is not likely to get any lower in our animation. Get that selected again and zoom in a bit. Then we can come back to orthographic scale. Something like that should be close. We don't want anything too close to the edge of the frame. And then we'll go through the animation and we'll look that he stays in the frame for the whole animation set. So maybe it's a little bit too close here. So maybe, oh, I don't remember. Oops. Let's try 2.2. So we're going to call that good enough right there, and that should keep him completely in the frame for his whole animation set. So the next thing to set up would be lighting. So let's look at what we have for lights here. Usually something like 2-point light is where we should look at. And you might notice that the character is facing the wrong way. We're just going to invert that in the GIMP software. So we'll just flip his direction in GIMP. So let's just do a test render, see what he looks like. He's got good bright color, but maybe a little too bright on his face. So we could look at our lights and maybe decrease them to 500 watt lights. So we'll take light 1 and light 2 and bring those down to 500. Test that out in terms of a render. Still a little bright on his face. Let's see which one's on his face. This one. We could grab it back a bit and grab it back a bit. Test that out. That looks okay. We're going to call that acceptable. So let's go to frame 1. We can go F12, render that image, save as. We'll go into animations and player. We'll just call it untitled. So we'll save that one. We can render the walk cycle, so Control F12. Render is just F12. That will render off the frames of the walk cycle. If we select the rigging, go into pose mode, select the rigging, we can find the point for our jump cycle. So our jump cycle starts at 24. So we'll change our start to 24. The jump cycle ends at 32. So there's 8 frames there. 32. If the timing on the jump cycle is not good, we'll just fix it in Godot, because it may not be perfect the way that it is. So we can just Control F12. These will render with different frame numbers for their file names. So that should get us everything that we need into our image folder. Let's save those changes. So we'll save that. We'll open up GIMP. And we'll check how much time we're at here. So we're at 8 minutes. We can get a start on making the sprite sheet. So what we're going to do is we're going to open as layers, desktop, platformer demo, animations, player, and Control All. We'll select all of the images in there. It may be helpful to get a count on how many images are there. That'll look quite a mess. So let's get to desktop, demo, animations, player. So we have 30 items. Probably a 3x10 sprite sheet. With the image looking like this, what we're going to do is we're going to go image, crop to content. So with that done, we can go Control N. We want 71 times 10. And 123 times 3. And that will give us enough slots to fit all of the images. Now, I should have filled this with transparency, but that's okay. We can go Layer, Transparency, Add Alpha Channel, Control A, Control X. We'll go Image, Configure Grid. let's go back for a reminder. We're 71 by 123. So 71, break the chain, 123, okay. View, show the grid, view, snap to grid. Now in here, if we come down to the bottom, we can go new layer group, and we'll start adding all of the layers to the group in order. So we'll just add them all to this group. And this is quite a few layers of animation here, so it takes a little bit of time to do this part, a little tedious. Then untitled is the first frame, so we'll uncheck visibility on all of them, except for the one frame. And again, it's a lot of frames, so a little bit tedious. We can just close that layer group up. We'll pick the entire group up. We'll hover over the other image and drop this into this image. Now we can layer by layer place them into their appropriate slots. When we use the Move tool in GIMP, you have to be over top of active pixels to be able to pick a layer up. So we'll start at Untitled. We'll need to come down to the bottom. It's good to highlight a layer that's close to where you're working so that you don't keep jumping up and down the layer groups. And we're just paying attention to the numbers here. Let's check how much time we have. Okay, we only have a couple minutes left, so I'll just demonstrate. But we won't go through the whole sheet because that's pretty time consuming. So we'll just activate the visibility of the layers as we go, picking them up and putting them into the next category. When we get down to this area, when the frame is in the middle of a frame like this, of these two frames, I'll just work from top to bottom, but if it lands dead onto a frame, I'll work up to the frame that it's overlapping, and then I'll start working from the other side and work backwards. So we just go through the entire layer group, activating the visibility and dropping them into the next slot. So I'll finish making this sprite sheet and export it for use in Godot. So in the next video we'll have this sprite sheet completely made. I think that conveys how to do it. So export is simply export as, and choose your location. It should be exported as a PNG. So that's it for this video. In the next video we'll get this into Godot and start making a character out of it. And until then, take care.